Hello and welcome to the Property Roundup here on iProperty Radio with myself, Carol Tallon, the show where we chat to industry experts to get a view of activity on the ground and to learn about new trends emerging. This show is sponsored by daft.ie, Ireland's most visited property website. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Tom Crosse, Property Director at GVM Auctioneers in Limerick. Tom, you're very welcome you're welcome back to the show. Obviously we've spoken to you previously and I'm delighted that you were able to join us today so we can hear about what's happening in the Limerick market.
Hi, Carl. How are you? Delighted to come on to your show. Yeah, last time we met, I think, was in a hotel in Dublin after one of our conferences, and we had a bit of a chat about the Limerick and the Midwest property market. So thrilled to be here again and sharing some views.
Delighted. And if memory serves, I think we were joined by a number of your colleagues and some of the IPAV team. And I always love to get a good regional look of what's happening in the marketplace because, you know, while we're looking at the stats and while they're broken down region to region, I always find when I speak to estate agents and auctioneers operating across the country, we always find interesting little pockets of things that are happening that maybe aren't recorded within the larger trends. So that's always an area of interest. But for GVM, obviously most people will be very familiar with your brand. While you have a strong hold in the Limerick market, your signage will be seen outside of Limerick quite extensively it has been in 2023. So you might just talk to us. Maybe let's start with the new homes because it's such a hot topic at the moment. You know, we still have a chronic shortage of housing, secondhand homes and new homes, but it feels like new home supply is maybe the one that the government is really actively trying to target. So you might just tell us what's happening on the new home side of GVM right now.
Okay, I suppose Limerick has eventually seen the emergence of some new developments coming out around over the past 3 or 4 years. Prior to that, prices weren't strong enough to justify the build. Builders did begin to come in 2019. And in Limerick, there are probably, and it's not a lot, probably 5 or 6 developments that are active in different pockets of the city. It's not a huge amount of housing, but it's up and running, and thankfully I'm glad to report that all developments are selling quite well. This year the year started quite well. Quarter 1 was very, very strong. I think there was a fall off in Quarter 2 where the market paused a little bit with interest rates increasing. There was a little bit of concern around where prices may or may not go, but over the summer that concern abated, and Quarter 3 has been very, very strong. And as we head into the back end of the year, I think the demand is continuing. We have experienced very, very strong sales graphs over the past few months. At the moment, we're selling a development in Castletroy. New 3-bed semis in Limerick are fetching around 395, late threes, Carl, give or take, which is the starting point in the market. Apartments are fetching 295. Duplex units are fetching 350 to 370. The higher density stock isn't selling, let me tell you. First-time buyers are very much opting into the traditional townhouse or 3-bed semi if it's within their affordability structure. Only those that are maybe unable to reach because of salary scales are opting into the traditional apartment type offering. That's an interesting stat. Very little investor interest that normally would be targeted at the apartment stroke duplex type offering. That type of stock is a challenge at the minute all over Limerick, and I think pretty much all over the country.
Tom, there's a lot in what you said there, so let's break it down. There's some really interesting figures. So my first observation is that, you know, in terms of 3-bed semis, that's a good price for new 3-bed semis when we look at maybe the average earnings. And so for a first-time buyer, would 395 heading into kind of the early 4s, would that be about on par for what the majority of first-time buyers are coming in terms of budget?
That's where they're coming in at in budget. But, you know, I suppose for many, many years, you take a normal civil servant or a guard or a nurse, or they would have been a blue chip buyer back in the day. Now it might take 2 guards combined with respect to them, a combined salary of 110 or 20 grand to be able to afford a 400,000 euro purchase. And that's just the way the market has gone. So I think house prices and property prices have surpassed salary scales in many ways. And that's a big challenge for buyers. So either they have, if it's a single buyer, they need the help of mum or dad, or they need, an investment from an outside source to get them on the property ladder at that price point. So that's a very, very big challenge. We're seeing lots of singles that are unable to get going. They're paying huge rents. In Limerick, they're paying around £2,000 a month for an average duplex or a nice 3-bed semi or a 2-bed townhouse. They can, if they can get on the property ladder, their repayment will actually be less than that. They have security of tenure. They have their own home, and they're paying it off over time.
Look, to be honest, the increase in rents in regional areas is really motivating for first-time buyers to try get on the ladder, because that overpayment in rent compared to what they'd be paying in a mortgage is really stark. So it's definitely a point of frustration. But the interesting stat there in terms of duplexes, they're still coming in at a particularly high price. Who's buying those? Because duplexes tend to be the first-time buyers who can't raise maybe the budget for a 3-bed semi, but it's not something they tend to choose. And yet investors aren't as likely to pick them up. So who's buying the duplexes?
Well, what's happening in a number of cases is that they're being allocated to the social and affordable aspect of the development. We're seeing some developers holding them as part of their overall property portfolio. There's a very, very limited market for that type of product, particularly in the Midwest region. And I'm hearing that from colleagues and agents all around the country. And we've been lobbying actively with our local reps in terms of trying to get the planning laws and residency laws changed. It doesn't make any sense pushing and forcing developers into that type of high density offering if they cannot sell it at the far side. And in a lot of cases, developments are paused, or developers are holding to see if the prices can rise strong enough to make it affordable to build, because apartment building and duplex building is an expensive build. And they're telling me here in Limerick to deliver the construction of an apartment is costing 250 grand. If you're only getting 290 or 295 at the far side, you take the VAT off the 295, take your professional fees off it, and apply a side fine of 10 or 15 grand, which is very, very low. You're only breaking even at best. So the model we're seeing down here for that type of offering is the developer holds and rents. They apply it where they can to Part 5. And then you have the HAs coming in, or the housing blocks coming in, buying them in block, or the organizations coming in, taking a block out, and they're buying that on a kind of a rental stroke investment model. And it's working from that way.
You made, just as you were giving your overview of the marketplace, you made the point high density stock isn't selling. Like, it's the part of the market that isn't selling. And what we see through the approved housing bodies in the last maybe 18 to 24 months is that there's been a lot of pre-purchasing happening. So is that happening in Limerick, or talk to me about the stock level that's there at the moment. So is there any pockets of stock in Limerick, maybe that just isn't selling at the moment?
Well, in most developments, we launched a development in Green Park, which is the old Limerick Racecourse. I'm sure you know it, Carl. 4 weeks ago, the first 12 sales were 12 houses. And then we sold one apartment that was at a launch. And the ratio was probably 90% housing as against 10% high density type offerings. So, and even at that, sometimes those apartment or duplex sales mightn't necessarily stick. Wherever they can, people are opting in to housing stock rather than the high density offering.
Look, that doesn't surprise me at all. I get myself in trouble for saying it, but as Irish people, we are still only, most of us are still within 2 to 3 generations or closer to the land. And the reality is we've seen time and time and time again that actually, while the government wants us to adopt more or compact ways of living, and we understand the sustainability argument for that, at the end of the day, people are still choosing. They're choosing more space, they're choosing a front garden, they're choosing off-street parking, they're choosing a house over an apartment or duplex when they have the choice. They just don't always have the choice. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of the demographic of who you're seeing at the moment? Because I think we're in an interesting time post-COVID. You know, we saw during COVID, a lot of people left the main cities, they went back to regional cities and towns and rural areas. The demographic that you're seeing across all buying sectors, who's looking to live or to buy or to move into the Limerick area, city and county?
Well, in Limerick, we have a very, very strong local market. We have some very, very strong business parks here. We've big companies that are expanding. We have Regeneron, we have Eli Lilly, we have Analog, we have Johnson and Johnson, all huge multinational employers here that are generating and employing high numbers. So we have the local market. We have a lot of non-Irish buyers. It's a very, very big part of the market. So we have buyers that have come in from overseas. And I would say, particularly in the new developments, they are definitely contributing to 50% plus of our sales, which is a very, very interesting stat. And in doing numbers recently, I think across 4 developments that we actively are selling now, I think Paul, my son, who looks after new homes, mentioned to me that we're up around over 60% of the buyers are non-national. We welcome them. They're great people. They're supporting the market. From them, we're hearing that they're tired of paying the high rents. They're tired of the lack of security around their tenure. Many of them are getting support from their home countries financially. And they're beg borrowings literally to get on the market and get on the ladder and get up and running. And they're getting over the line, and they're a hugely important part of the market for us at present. So it's a local market, and it's I suppose it's the new Irish buyers we refer to them as. Yeah.
Right. Very good. And Tom, I know that GVM has a very strong legacy in terms of agri-land, which probably helped you make over the past decades the transition into a lot of development land, which is feeding into new homes. But let's start with the development land. What's the market in and around Limerick like there?
Transactional evidence and transactions generally have been quiet. We had a lot of land banks that came to the market at the end of the recession, if you like, and a number of land banks changed hands in 16, 17, 18, which are now coming out of the ground in terms of the developments I'm referring to. Land values down here at that time and since then per acre are landing at around 450,000 euro per acre for R1 zoned development land ready for housing, and that would be serviced. That would be the kind of price point that we've experienced down here. Values haven't really changed because I think while house prices have increased, and they have substantially. I mean, back when we started, developers started back in Limerick in 19, and back really active again, a 3-bed semi was 290. Now we're 100 grand over and above that, but equally the construction costs have gone up, I think on par with the sale price. So the margin is pretty much the same for builders. And I'm looking at their figures. They're sharing them with me on a regular basis. And they're sort of seeing unit or stand values in Limerick at around 30,000 each per house. Not worth any more than that because the margin isn't in it. And you've got to factor in financing cost, risk, market risk, another factor. So there has to be margin for the builder and the developers, but it's tight, Carl. It's tight. They're showing me figures. You know, it's not like what it was back in the day in the early 2000s. Margins were much, much bigger. I think on average, I'm seeing developers and builders working on a margin of 10, max 15%.
I understand what you're saying, that it's tight and there isn't a huge amount of activity, but we are seeing progress in terms of where we were maybe in 2019 and early 2020. You know, we were involved in some placemaking projects down there, and at the time, one of the biggest observations from, say, the Chamber of Commerce and the local business community was that any inward investment seemed to be state, that actually there was a difficulty getting private investment into the area for development. And we can see that starting to shift now. But, a lot of the redevelopment that was happening, the regeneration, was very much state-led, which meant it was slower, that there wasn't that appetite for private investment coming in. So it's interesting when you talk about maybe, say, the new home schemes that are there at the moment. So I know GVM are dealing with, is it 4 new home schemes in Limerick at the moment? Are they all put forward by Limerick-based developers or developers with a connection to Limerick?
Well, one is London-based, with historical Limerick and Tipperary connections. I suppose hence my involvement. They are currently building 3 of the schemes. The other scheme is Green Park, which is an exciting development. It's city centre, and that's led really by the original owners of the race course, and a very, very strong local family who have placed their confidence in the development and in the location, and they've started building down there, and it's doing really, really well for them. Other than that, a lot of the builders and developers, Carl, that did really well over the years, and unfortunately got washed away through no fault of their own. They were all very, very good people. Most of them haven't come back, unfortunately, and that's sad and it's disappointing. And many of the old traditional building families that built Limerick, if you like, in the 90s and early 2000s, they haven't returned to the market. And you're right, a lot of the investment has been from outside of Limerick, and some of them are backed by funds, and there's only a handful really active in the market. For a city of 100,000 people, it's probably a little bit tight given the level of activity going on here economically.
Well, look, one of the things that I was really interested about with GVM, that unlike maybe some of the regional estate agents and auctioneers, you've really been able to spread your presence. So, we always talk about auctioneering and property and real estate, no more than construction, as being very much a people and relationship led business. And we talked about the new homes developments that you're working in Limerick, but your team have really extended outside of Limerick in 2023. So what other areas are you looking at, or were you working on it this year?
Yeah, well, I suppose, look, the aforementioned developer that is very active here in Limerick also acquired sites in Tala in Dublin and in Kildare. He asked us, would we get involved in terms of selling the houses for him on those sites. Initially, I suppose we thought it was a little bit out of our jurisdiction or our area, but my son Paul, who worked and had a marvellous time up there with Hook and MacDonald in new homes for a number of years, returned to us in Limerick 3 years ago. He encouraged, I suppose, our involvement and said, look, he'd take care of it. And I suppose normally you see Dublin agents moving down the country, taking a bit of our action down here, which is their prerogative, obviously. But yeah, we've successfully sold 100 odd houses in Tala for Formation Homes. That's just concluding at the moment up there, and all buyers are in. They since then acquired a site, the old Army Barracks in Kildare, known as McGee Barracks. And they have secured planning there for 370 houses. Again, we launched that scheme in the past 5 weeks, and we've been up there every Saturday. We hit away and we get up there and we meet our clients, and we've had a tremendously successful launch up there, and we're coming away with sales every Saturday, and we're thrilled with the response we're getting. I suppose many years ago in this business, Carl, aspiring buyers came to our office and they looked at photographs on the wall. That's when I started out. And they called us for all the minute details associated with a house or with a property. And they came to see us in the office. Our world has changed in terms of marketing, in terms of how the business evolves. Very, very few clients now come to our office. We all need a base, I think, and need to be in town meeting other professionals and meeting solicitors and colleagues and accountants and fellow professionals. And some people do drop in from time to time for a meeting or for a chat or whatever. But the majority of our clients that are house buying, they inquire obviously they can inquire on the mobile phone, they see our signage on the site. But more importantly, website advertising is now a huge chunk of our business. And it's probably the national websites that are driving most of the inquiries. So the Daft and the My Home platforms, while we find them expensive, and that's been contentious as well, I suppose, between the groups and agents, but it affords us the opportunity to operate outside our area. And we also advertise actively on online presence. We have a marketing team here that advertise on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. And again, those platforms afford us the opportunity to advertise our wares nationally, and it allows us to go to Kildare and sell a housing scheme, or go to Tala and sell a housing scheme. And I think if you ask most agents in Dublin to put their hand on their heart and say, how many of your buyers come to your office? Not too many. They may come to collect the key, or shake their hand and get the bottle of wine on closing. Other than that, Carol, most of our business is done online, or on the mobile phone, or at the development sites. I mean, in Green Park, for instance, we have just started down there. We have a marketing suite. I'm in the marketing suite tomorrow morning, Saturday. I'll meet my clients at the marketing suite. We don't have a show house yet. It's probably 7 or 8 months away. And the websites and our digital marketing will drive people to that particular marketing suite tomorrow morning. And I'm there for a couple of hours and I meet the clients. My son Paul goes to Kildare tomorrow. He has done some targeted online digital marketing ahead of tomorrow. And hopefully that brings new buyers to Kildare tomorrow. That's how it's been done. It's working for us. We're thrilled to be operating for the developers and the builders that we have. They're tremendous people. They're wonderful builders. And it's an honour and a privilege for us to be so busy, thankfully.
Tom, you're preaching to the choir here. I've been banging that drum about digital marketing and the importance of social media and leveraging the platforms that are there for the past decade. So I love that you describe it as essentially your world changing in terms of marketing, and it goes beyond marketing. It's how buyers and consumers of property, whether they're involved in commercial or residential transactions, whether they're renting, buying, it's how consumers of property want to be able to engage and access it. So I think that's really interesting. And look, I do admire that turn where you're right. You know, we've seen the drip of Dublin agents coming into the regions. So it's nice to see that. It's nice to see that reversal from time to time. And I think if anything, because again, I'm always banging the drum about technology, I think it does remind us of how important those personal relationships and the human contact is in terms of in terms of property and real estate. Because even though I sometimes tend to forget it with my focus on technology, real estate is and will remain a people business, because people like to do business, and particularly when you're talking about the development land. And there's one interesting pocket, and I'm conscious of time here, but there's one interesting pocket of the Limerick market that I'm interested in, because Limerick over the past decade was seen as a good place for buy-to-let investors, who wanted to get in to an affordable marketplace that had strong, people moving into the area for strong employment. There was a strong student market, and there was really high yields. So I remember, after the crash and in the early days of the recovery, Limerick was really seen as quite a target for buy-to-let investors. Now, in recent years, nowhere in Ireland seems to be a target for buy-to-let investors. So you might just talk to us about the experience. We know the trends very clearly are one-off investors, and I don't like this mom and pop investor tag, but that tends to be what it is, exiting the market. Is that the experience in Limerick, or are you seeing any trends where investors are buying in?
Okay, the only area where we're seeing investors buying in are immediately adjacent to the colleges, as in the University of Limerick, as in the Mary Immaculate College, or in Moylish. The immediate locality there does see some inward investment from existing landlords that have good knowledge and experience in the business and may extend their portfolio. Other than that, we're seeing very, very little inward investment buying residential properties. There is an exception that we've experienced in the last 18 months, and it's a bugbear of many landlords that have been kind and looking after historical tenants that they've had for many, many years. They're now rent capped and are limited to a rent of 800 or 900 per month, and their neighbour may be getting $2,000 a month. So what we're seeing is those landlords exiting out of that particular property, selling, and replacing it with an alternative investment. And those investors we're seeing as well are opting into the newer stock, the more modern stock, and the A-rated stock. So they may have been getting 800 a month or 900 a month max for what they had historically let to their long-standing tenant. They'll get $2,500 a month. Yeah, they'll have to put in a bit more financially into the investment at source buying in, but the return is much greater, and they're future-proofing their investment. But overall, very, very limited investment market in Limerick, and hence, I suppose, the chronic shortage of accommodation. And if anything, and you chat to the management companies here in Limerick, they'll tell you that there's an exodus out of the market because of the rent caps, because of the taxation, because of issues around PRTB and tenants' rights and everything else that goes with it.
It's very difficult to the rationale between somebody who is capped at a 2% increase while at the same time facing 6, 7, 8% inflation. It's very difficult to see the rationale for that. It's not sustainable for a long period of time. It's interesting to hear, though, the experience of people maybe exiting those properties to reinvest in a property that it makes absolute sense. I just haven't heard about it. But no doubt it is happening across the country. But I in terms of the news we've seen this week, budget 2024, which was supposed to help landlords stay in the market, because we know that's what's good for tenants who require supply in the marketplace. Do you think budget 2024 did anything in a significant way to either keep the existing landlords that we have or to attract new landlords into the market?
I think the net gain for most landlords is something in the region of 600 or 700 euros per unit per year. It's only a drop in the ocean relative to what the overall context of what's going on. You have to remember, interest rates have gone up quite a lot in the past 12 months. So landlords, yeah, they may have been benefiting from increased rents, but now their repayments have gone through the roof in the meantime. Even those on trackers will tell you, and I'm seeing a lot of that, by the way, historical people that had long-term trackers that would have been very, very cost effective for them. That's, they're gone through the roof in the last sort of 12 months. So that's driving some of the landlords away as well. So bottom line here is the stock that's exiting the rental market isn't being replaced or being replenished by new investors. And unless the government takes a serious look at the taxation element of it, the rent caps, I don't know, like I'm over back to Germany a little bit. They have a square meter type rent cap. So if a 3-bed CBD in Limerick is renting at €20 a square foot in an area, that it's a per meter per foot monthly rental payment. That's how it's calculated. And it's the same in other European countries. And maybe the same should apply here. And then rent cap it if they wish at that stage. But there has to be a balance between a historical renter at 800 and someone new getting $2,000 next door or $2,500 next door.
Yeah, no, look, you're absolutely right. That doesn't make sense. And listen, thank you so much for taking the time to take us through that today. I genuinely always appreciate your insights to really understand what's happening on the ground in Limerick City and County, and indeed now in the wider area. So I'd recommend anybody take a look at those new schemes, particularly in Kildare, that's launching. And Tom, before we finish up, what are you expecting over the next 12 months? Because it's been just since we came out of COVID, it's been a really interesting time. The trends have been a little bit unpredictable. What are you expecting for Limerick City and County in 2024?
I would have been a little bit apprehensive about the market, I suppose, last spring. The summer, it bucked up a little bit again, and the back end of the year is finishing strong for what we can see of it. There's obviously concern around interest rates, concern around fuel prices, concern around maybe little wobbles in the economy or outside influences like the Ukrainian war having an impact. Overall, certainly I'm giving a very, very positive view from Limerick. It's a buoyant city. It's doing very, very well with a lot of inward investment. We have a housing stock beginning to increase. We have new builds happening. We're looking forward to 24 with a lot of optimism, with a lot of hope. We think it's going to be a good year. We certainly have the stock to provide for aspiring buyers. We're confident the market will hold up, and we're looking forward to a very, very good year ahead.
That's a note of hope that we needed to hear. Thank you so much, Tom. That was Tom Crosse, Property Director at GVM Auctioneers in Limerick. My thanks to Katie Talon and to the production team at Hear Me Roar Media, and huge thanks to our show sponsor Daft.ie, Ireland's most visited property website. And thank you indeed for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Property Roundup. In the meantime, please be sure to check out all of the other Irish and international construction and real estate shows on iProperty Radio.